Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, July 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 39 days, the game against Michigan in 130 days. If you are planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. As you are watching this, Tony Gerdeman and I may or may not be jetting across the country to Las Vegas. Guess it depends on when you watch it. We're definitely going to be doing that tonight. So we will be headed out to Vegas. Big Ten Media Days start on Tuesday. Buckeyes will be there day one. Michigan will be there day three on Thursday. We will be there for both of those. We'll be there for the full event. All 3 days. Should be a ton to talk about. One of those things to talk about, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti apparently weighed in on the NCAA's investigation into Michigan as part of the most recent hearing that happened in early June. He sent a letter to the NCAA Committee on Infractions. In his opinion, Michigan doesn't need any more punishment. Time served, all done in the case involving former staffer Connor Stalions. Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com joins me. Tony, I think there's two different pieces of this story that are interesting and probably stuff that people may not totally understand, at least based on some of the initial reaction online. So I will leave it up to you. Choose your own adventure to talk about the criminology behind this and who leaked this. How do we know that they leaked this? Why would you leak it now? Turn to page 14. And if you'd like to talk about, is this game over, Tony, for the NCAA's investigation? Has Tony Petitti painted them into a corner? You can turn to page 47. Tony Gerdeman, choose your own adventure.
Let's go to page 14 and talk about why this is coming out now and why it would come out at all. I think those are two valid questions that could be its own show, basically. I think the key thing here is this is Dan Wetzel reporting it, well-known, but well-respected, but a lot of his information comes from the Michigan side of things, which I fully believe this has been given to him from the Michigan side of things again. And so he's also being told the rosiest portrait of this. And as we know from the Michigan side of things, that's not always been the most accurate picture painted of, when you hear stories from inside the Michigan walls and the Schembechler halls there, the walls of the Schembechler Hall, like it's painted in the best possible light. And that's why this letter, I would believe it has much of it says, hey, come on, Michigan's been through enough, guys. Let's just ease up on them. And I think there's some validity to a commissioner doing that for one of his schools. But again, I think what I take from this, one of the main things I take from this is that this is very much, to me, reads like a story where somebody comes in and tries to convince you that basically the commissioner said, we're fine. The commissioner, you should read this letter. I don't remember what it said word for word, but the gist of the letter was that the commissioner thinks we are very pretty.
And, I think one thing that on the Michigan side of things, you would certainly point at and go, well, this is extremely telling and extremely important, is that Tony Petitti has not always been telling Michigan that they were pretty in this case. You only have to go back a little under 2 years, and Michigan fans were ready to burn Tony Petitti at the stake because, boy, he had jumped the gun and he had failed due process, and they were going to stand on the table and, pound their shoe like Nikita Khrushchev. And, oh, boy, and then they folded on that because they recognized that they didn't really have a leg to stand on. And he suspended Jim Harbaugh 3 games in season in 2023. That was very, very unusual. And that was something that I think a lot of people viewed as, this is something that, very obviously, there's proof to this. Like, very clearly, this is not something the Big Ten does just on a whim. So that in and of itself was telling. But now for him to have, now he did that then, and now he's saying, hey, enough. That's something that I think a lot of people are sort of pointing at from the Michigan side in terms of why, this is a big deal. One other piece of the, yes, they're leaking this, and yes, they're leaking it before the NCAA's committee is expected to issue a ruling before the season, which we're now just over a month out. So that's getting close. But Tony, you and I are about to get on an airplane to go talk to Tony Petitti tomorrow. And it doesn't strike me as a coincidence that this came out the day before Tony Petitti is going to go talk in front of a bunch of TV cameras.
Mm-hmm. And in that article from Dan Wetzel, he was already declined comment, which is exactly what he's going to do when he's asked, assuming he is asked about this on Tuesday when he speaks with the media, he'll decline comment. I wonder, I assume most coaches will as well, but I think it's a question that should be posed to them as well. How do you feel about this reported letter that your commissioner doesn't think that Michigan should receive any further harm or any further punishment? How do you feel about that? But it is interesting that this happens now. It's not a coincidence, because it could have happened the day after the letter was read in court or in the committee. Like, this could have happened well before it happens now.
Yeah, so there you go. So there's the who and the why behind the leak, and this is one of these things that when you have a political scandal, everyone always wants to make it about that, and it's like, well, that doesn't impact the substance of the issue. That's just sort of understanding kind of the bigger picture. So now let's turn to page 47 and get to the substance of the letter and what it all means. And I will, Tony, I don't have rules to read from here, but I do have an article to read from. So you'll have to make do. No bylaws. We'll get to that with Bill Carollo during the officiating press conference on Tuesday. But just a little bit from the Wetzel article. The letter was read at an early June Infractions Committee hearing in Indianapolis. Multiple sources told ESPN. And just an aside, the Big Ten did confirm to Dan Wetzel that there was, a letter was sent. The NCAA has charged Michigan with 11 rule violations, 6 of them level 1, which is classified as the most serious. The committee has yet to hand down a ruling, but one is expected before the 2025 season. It does not have to follow or even consider Petitti's opinion, which is, I think, a significant piece of this, because I don't think the discourse around this whole thing has been particularly measured on either side of the more extreme Michigan fans / fan media types and some of the more extreme Michigan rival type fans and fan media types. I saw, immediately the reaction from a lot of Michigan folks, the Michigan folks who've been telling you that nothing, there was no advantage gained. And like immediately the reaction is kind of like, well, there you go. There you have it. And so there's nothing more to say if Tony Petitti said, and I do think it is an important distinction, that last line there, that this is not the committee saying this. This is not something the committee even has to take into any serious account. This is just Tony Petitti saying this. And at this point, Tony Petitti has a lot of reasons to not want Michigan to face a postseason ban, for example, because Tony Petitti is trying to get as many teams in the college football playoff as he can and have those teams do as well as they can. So it's probably in Tony Petitti and the Big Ten's best interest for Michigan to not get a postseason ban of a year or two. And I feel like that's probably, you do have a little bit of a dollars and cents to the potentially to the why behind this.
It's also a little bit like when a congressperson votes for something they know isn't going to pass, but they want to look good for their constituents. And they're like, hey, I tried to stop it. Like I did a good thing and I had your backs, guys. That's what this looks like to me, because it is 1,000,000% ludicrous that if this letter is exactly as Dan Wetzel puts it, or as it was presented to him, that he doesn't think there should be any further punishments, because the entirety of the punishments for the Connor Stalions thing was 3 games suspended for Jim Harbaugh. Let's keep in mind, they got 3 years of probation for the previous thing, for the COVID recruiting things. Is he saying there should be no probation for this? Is he saying there should be no fine for this? Is he saying there should be no further punishment for this? To think that he would say that is crazy, because he knows that there is probation coming from this. He knows that there are financial penalties coming from this. Perhaps, even aside from postseason ban or vacating games, like that's even aside from the thing. To think that he thinks there should be no further punishments, that he legitimately thinks there should be no further punishments, is crazy, because he knows there will be. So to argue otherwise, to me, that just flies in the face of anything legitimate, that he thinks the 3 games is all that would come from this. And that's it, because that's not how this has ever worked. I know he's only been in the NCAA for a few years. That's not how this has ever worked. And there's going to be further punishments. Is it the hammer? Doesn't matter. We're not talking about the hammer. We're talking about that's it. That's it. We're done. It's like, no, that's impossible, because there will be NCAA punishments. They're not just going to be like, you handle this for us, Tony. We're good. Thanks. Did we waste some time? Did we waste a lot of time and money when you took care of this for us back in 2023? Like, we owe you. Is there something? Can we send you some flowers? An edible arrangement? Like, how can we make this up to you? So it's crazy to think that he thinks that there should be no further punishments.
Well, what I think is, if you want to look at the no further punishments, period, full stop, game over, drive home safe, everyone. Tony, do you know who thinks there should be further punishments and has in fact proposed further punishments? Michigan? It's Michigan. Oh. Crazy enough, the University of Michigan has proposed from the Wetzel article, Michigan, as ESPN previously reported, has proposed suspending current coach Sherrone Moore for the third and fourth game of the 2025 season for deleting a thread of text messages with Stalions as the scandal broke. So I feel like the odds that there's nothing more coming down the pike is slightly less than zero, because if they, unless the NCAA wants to say no, you're good, you're fine. Please take back that letter that you sent us offering to have Sherrone Moore serve a 2-game suspension. Why would he serve a 2-game suspension? We don't know. There's nothing else to punish. So, I'm sure Michigan volunteered that with the expectation that no action would be taken on it. That feels implausible to me. So, I think that's one thing. Can I just jump in? You are talking, Tom, about a program that is trying to be too proactive and punishing themselves, when this is just the case of Michigan, who has always been proactive and has never dragged their feet, and now they're trying to hand down themselves a punishment that even Tony Petitti thinks is a bridge too far. And I guarantee you there are people who think that is a serious thing. That, Michigan, we as I say, Michigan, like, we are always, too fast to act to punish ourselves, and we should just have listened to we shouldn't have done that, because Tony Petitti clearly thinks that we didn't deserve that. And there are people out there that thinks Michigan is too forthcoming with their wrongdoings and their punishments, and this is certainly just feeding right into their frenzy. It does feel like that was not the narrative around how Michigan handled the COVID era punishments, which we will open bracket, cheeseburgers, etc., close bracket, like that whole thing. Jim Harbaugh was, one of the reasons that Michigan got the punishment that it did was that Jim Harbaugh was not at all compliant and not at all cooperative with that investigation. So, that's a very nice story to tell yourself. I don't think that that's really borne out by the fact. And, as part of this Wetzel article, even as he's telling this, here's some of the context around it. The NCAA might still hit the Wolverines with penalties ranging from vacating past victories, a postseason ban, the suspension of coaches, a monetary fine, or other measures. All that stuff is on the table. I think, we have been, there have been lots of people who have been racing out to tell you exactly what the punishment is based on precedent that's not really exactly directly applicable. And there's been other people who've just said hammer coming, and that's a great way to, whatever happens, you can claim victory, because and then the people who say nothing serious is coming, that's a pretty easy one to claim victory on too, as well, because whatever it is probably going to be somewhere in the middle of 5-year postseason ban and Tony Petitti's desperate plea for absolutely nothing more. So it's going to follow somewhere in the middle there. My question though, Tony, is how much does this letter, in your mind, move the needle with the committee? Does this materially change what's coming for Michigan one way or the other, or not so much? This is a letter that just gets looked at. And check this out. Do you see this? Like, this is I wanted to search and see like how often like this is the case, where it's basically a form letter from the AD or form testimony from a commissioner saying like, hey, these are good guys. They just made a simple mistake, wrong crowd, that sort of thing. I promise you, we'll watch out for them. Like, to me, I don't think it makes any difference, because again, if this message is
being relayed accurately, that he thinks nothing else should happen, the NCAA is like, shut up. Like, who just crumple this up and toss it. I'm surprised it stayed in the file. As crazy as it sounds, it's like, what is this? How did this get in here? Were the kids drawing again and they put something in the family file? Like, this is does not move the needle at all. And honestly, something like this, if it actually says, hey, I don't think Michigan should be punished any further, I don't think that does them any good. And Tom, maybe that's what Tony Petitti is trying to do as we come full circle from the guy that suspended Jim Harbaugh 3 games without the power to do so, even though it was held up and Michigan allowed him to do it. He, in his diabolical manner, has said, leave Michigan alone. And Nancy is like, oh, you watch it now, Buster. We'll leave him alone. We're going to leave Michigan alone right to the poorhouse. I think maybe that is the only acceptable reason for Tony Petitti to write a letter saying, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
I don't want to say definitely, but Machiavelli, I believe that's an Italian name. Petitti, I believe that's an Italian name. I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, yeah. I think there's the other side of this, which is absolutely impossible to know, is Tony Petitti is the head of a major conference, one of the 2 biggest conferences. And what's the future of the NCAA? Are they going to remain in the future? Do they want to stay in the good graces of the guy in the, no further punishments, period, full stop. Absolutely not going to happen. If you wanted to argue, and I'm sure people are arguing that, I think that's at least worth mentioning, that that could be something that could potentially, if it's going to impact it, that would be the angle from which it would impact it, rather than this is a legitimate plea for, there is a legitimate case for no further punishments. That's the only area where I could maybe see that potentially having some kind of impact.
Well, and I also think that when he hands down this suspension and then the notice of allegations comes down 9 or 10 months later, that he had all of the information at that point and he had all of Michigan's responses at that point. Clearly he didn't, because, well, maybe he did have all of Michigan's responses because there have been none. So like the idea that he had all of the necessary information, that at that point he had enough to do something, clearly, because he did, and everybody allowed it and was okay with it. But then at that point to be like, yeah, there's nothing new to be learned here. And the NCAA is like, oh, but I think there will be.
So, well, we will find out probably within the next month or so, probably less, what the NCAA is going to do about Michigan. We will get a chance to talk to Tony Petitti on Tuesday. We'll see how much he wants to talk about this. We'll see how much Sharon Moore wants to talk about this on Thursday. We'll see how much Ryan Day wants to talk about this on Tuesday. Yeah, I think 0, 0, and 0 is quite possibly the answer there. But we'll get a chance to ask about all of that at Big Ten Media Days. It's going to be a very busy week. Tony, Kevin, and I headed out to Vegas to bring you 3 full days of content. Our general plan is going to be, Tony and I will have a live show for you about 11 a.m. each day. That's the plan. We'll see how well the internet and all the stuff out there holds up. But the plan is an 11 a.m. Eastern live show, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. Then we'll have content for you throughout the day. And then we'll have a evening sort of wrap-up live show. Again, we're planning on about 8 o'clock each night. All these times are Eastern times for you. We're not going to make you do the translation. And then we'll have content sort of throughout the day, throughout the evening, and throughout the morning as well. Plenty of stuff for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com and at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and of course on all of your podcast platforms as well. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.